Welcome to the And She Looked Up Creative Hour podcast with Lisa Bolton and Melissa Hartfield. We're two women who are artists and entrepreneurs, and yes, those two things can go together. This podcast is for the artists, the creators, and the makers who want to find a way to make a living creating what they love.
Welcome to episode 19 of the And She Looked Up Creative Hour. I'm Lisa, and as always, I'm here with my co-host, Melissa. How's it going, Melissa?
Good. How are you?
I'm great. It's a very nice day here today, so I'm very great. In our neck of the woods, summer is basically just around the corner, I'm hoping. I know for some creatives, and not all, but a lot of creatives, people can tend to find this period a little bit slower as a lot of people shift into a bit of a different gear as the weather gets nicer and the days are longer. And I think it kind of opens up an opportunity for people to maybe take a little bit more walks outside, or maybe there's more beach days or picnics in the park. And today we kind of wanted to talk about that kind of time and how you can best use it to nurture your creativity, that how using time to daydream and sit quietly with yourself can actually be one of the best ways to spark creative opportunities. Now, if you have kids, you have no doubt heard them say, "I'm bored." So I know in our house, I have a 9-year-old. I've witnessed this firsthand many times. And when screen time limits are reached, which is, TV and video games, that's usually the first 2 words out of his mouth. I'm bored. The experts will tell you it's a great thing for kids to be bored. Kids will push back on that and tell you it's no fun. But I find that if we say to our son, no, there's no more TV. You have to go find something. Go play with your Lego. Go play with your toys. It's usually met with a few minutes of grumbles. And then quietly he kind of slips away upstairs, and it takes a couple of minutes, and all of a sudden we hear this like, pew, 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 or come see what I built. Mom, you got to see this. And I'm looking at a pod that's flying into space or a broken down city. And it just really shows you that when forced, it's there. And I can see it in him. It's when he's most creative. And I think as adults, if you look around, adults don't really allow themselves a lot of opportunity to get bored. I think there's 2 pieces to that. I think there's a stigma attached to it, which we'll get into. But I also think that with all the digital technology that's out there, if you look around on public transit, anybody waiting in line anywhere, it's heads down on the phone. They're either crushing candy, or they're killing zombies, or they're doing a wordscapes game, or they're scrolling. Like, there's no really just sitting or standing with your own thoughts. You rarely see that even among adults. And yet, as a parent, I'm told to, force my child into boredom. I think sometimes adults need a little nudging into that. And especially if you're someone who makes their living as a creative, that there's this constant engagement that digital technology has created, and it can actually be quite detrimental. So if there's a way that you can find that sweet spot sort of between maybe chronic boredom and constant engagement, I think that's going to actually be really beneficial to creative brains.
I agree on so many of those things. We got the idea for this podcast from an article that was written on the Food Bloggers of Canada site a few years ago by Tiffany Meyer. She's a journalist and food writer out of Southern Ontario, called The Benefits of Being Bored. And I just found it so fascinating when she wrote this piece. And it's something that I think about a lot. And it's been really interesting during this isolation, social distancing world that we're in right now, where a lot of us are finding ourselves with our busyness taken away.
Mm-hmm.
Like what you said, there being a stigma when you're an adult to being bored, and how when you run into a friend and you ask them how they're doing, the first thing they say is, "Oh, I'm so busy. I'm so busy." Everybody's busy, 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 busy. And I actually hate that word. It's almost like a status symbol to be busy. I'm so busy. And so we don't ever really give ourselves or our brains time to just be at peace. Mm-hmm. Our brains need time to work things out and to process things. That's when the creativity can really start to flow. But we never really seem to give them that time anymore. And while we were prepping for this episode, I was thinking about, when I was a kid, sort of those years between the ages of, I think, 8 and 12 or 13, when you were old enough to entertain yourself, but too young to have a summer job. The first few weeks of summer holidays would be amazing. You got to sleep in and you could play all day and you didn't have to go to school and it was great. And then eventually, you hit that 2-week mark and I'm so bored. This is boring. There's nothing going on until we would go on our family camping trip at the end of August. And if we said we were bored to our parents, like this, we're Gen X, right? Like you said you were bored, the response was find something to do or I'll find something for you. And you never wanted your mom to find something for you to do because it was never going to be anything fun. We were, booted out of the house. We were told to go find something to do. And parents can't do that nowadays. You can't just kick the kids out of the house and let them roam the neighborhood without other people getting very upset. But we lived in a cul-de-sac, and the rule in our house was we had to be visible from the living room window, which faced out onto the cul-de-sac, or from the kitchen window, which faced out into the backyard. We were all bored, but the things we came up with while we were bored, like we played endless hours of make-believe Star Wars, and we would make up our own plot lines. We put on plays. We decided to start a neighborhood newspaper, left to our own devices. And we grew up in a time where screen time was just not a thing, right? You got your few hours of TV. Cable wasn't even popular at that point. So it's just very different. And I'm not trying to romanticize it or anything, but we really did have a lot of time to just be with our thoughts and find ways to entertain ourselves. The other day, all the quarantine stuff had kind of caught up to me. And I think I had been fairly positive up till this point, but I just had this one day where I just remember flopping down on my bed and looking at the ceiling, and I don't want to do anything. Should I read a book? No, I don't really feel like reading a book. Should I watch something on Netflix? No, I don't want to look at a screen. I should go out and mow the lawn? No, I don't want to do that. And I just flopped on the bed and just stared at the ceiling. And I think that was just my brain saying, you just need to stop. You need to stop trying to be positive. You need to stop trying to fill all the hours of your day. You need to just stop. We just don't tend to let ourselves do. And so maybe this pandemic has been a little bit of a blessing in some ways, and that it's forced some of us to slow down and maybe realize that a lot of this busyness, it's of our own doing. It's not maybe as necessary as we think it is.
Absolutely. This was a thing where you wore a busyness like a badge of honor. It was absolutely attached to, is attached to being important and to having value. If I'm busy, people need me, and my contribution is valued, and therefore I am valued. And I think you can, draw all these inferences from the badge of being busyness. And I know for myself at the beginning of January, I was very conscious of saying, I'm not going to wear that badge this year. I don't want to be going on about being busy, busy, busy. I do want to have a little bit more slow living, and I want to be able to not shy away from that. I don't want to feel bad about saying I wasn't very busy today, but I was raised in an incredibly industrious household. Both my parents worked very, very hard. They still do, and they have incredible work ethic. Even though they're retired, I don't think they've ever even worked harder sometimes. That was always put upon my sister and I, is that hard work. It's all about hard work. There wasn't a lot of stillness, and I actually value that. I'm grateful for that, but it's a blessing and a curse sometimes, because I take pride in being able to multitask. If I'm not consuming a podcast while I'm washing the dishes, I'm being inefficient. I think you're absolutely right that the pandemic kind of hit the pause button on everything, and it slamming on the brakes, and you could feel the tension of, whoa, did the world literally stop spinning on its axis?
Yeah, I think so. It's been really interesting to also watch how many people are so uncomfortable with that. A lot of introverts have been joking that they've been preparing their whole lives for this.
That's a good one.
But then you have the other extreme of people who are just really uncomfortable without having like a list of things lined up to do.
Well, we've seen some of the most incredible creativity out of this stillness. So it is amazing when you take away the busyness, you take away the running around and all of the errands, when you're forced to stay put and stay grounded. It has been absolutely incredible. I think we spoke about it quite a few episodes ago, because this pandemic's been going on for a long time. But we spoke about it, I would say a dozen episodes ago, about how awe-inspiring this creativity that has come out of people having this time on their hands, that these people that are creating art and music and written word and these beautiful images, all because they have time. Where was that before? Like our world was void of that before. And now we're actually getting a glimpse in it, and it really shows you what we're capable of when we take away all of that noise.
It has been really interesting to watch. I'm actually quite grateful for the fact that when I was younger, was forced by my parents to get comfortable with being bored. Lying on my bed that day, it was either last week or the week before, and just kind of realizing yeah, you don't have to do something all the time. And reading is my favorite escape mechanism. I love to read. It's only been in the last 10 years or maybe 15 years that I felt this way. Whereas growing up, I was a bookworm. That was one of the things I loved about the summer. The library would have the reading challenge.
Yeah, for sure.
Books, I was all over that. And all through university and after I finished university and stuff. But I'd say in the last 10 to 15 years, my reading consumption just dropped like a stone. And the reason was because it became a guilty pleasure, because it was the one thing I couldn't do without, I couldn't do anything else with it. If I was in front of the TV watching something, I could always be doing something else. But reading means I have to completely let the rest of the world go. And I just noticed how increasingly uncomfortable I was becoming with taking that time for myself. That's such a ridiculous thing when you step back and think about it. Where I really notice it is I keep track of all the books that I read every year. And there was a few years ago where I read one book and I was just horrified.
Wow, that seems so out of character for you.
And I am somebody who normally can easily read 20 books in a year without blinking and could read a lot more if I let myself.
I think for me, it was the fear of appearing lazy. There was always this fear of somebody, and I couldn't even tell you who, would look at what I did today and think, wow, that was a pretty lazy day. And that was not a compliment. I didn't grow up feeling that those days were rewarded lazy days. Like it was about being active and productive. And as an adult, when you can make those choices and there's no shortage of things to do, because I think that's the disconnect. It's about being bored when you have nothing to do and being bored when you still have a long to-do list. As you get older and you've got commitments and responsibilities, like that to-do just this never goes away. There's always something to do. So it makes being bored hard in a way that doesn't feel guilty, and you don't feel like you're being lazy because there's a shortage, whereas my 9-year-old legitimately has nothing to do.
That's exactly how I feel when I read a book, especially if it's a Saturday or a Sunday. Somebody's going to think I'm, you know what, I am just going to go mow the lawn first, because then at least I'll have done something and the world will not, it's like, who's watching? Nobody's watching. But I feel like I need to prove to the world that, yes, I did something today. So now I can sit down for an hour with my book. Reading has become a reward for me.
Do you think it makes you more creative? Do you think that it helps with sort of the ebbs and flows of creativity?
Reading 100% improves my creativity. 100%. Fiction, nonfiction,
okay,
both. 100%. I could make lots of arguments for why it's so great for me to take an hour to read, but it just feels so decadent because I can't, and maybe it's the advent of cell phones and text messaging and all that, I can't read a book if I'm scrolling through my cell phone through Instagram, right? A lot of people have said to me, oh, you should try audiobooks. But then, and I've really resisted audiobooks because then reading is just another task. That doesn't even make sense. But if I have to actually open a book or open my Kindle, I prefer to read a print book just because I like the feel of it and everything. But I do read on my Kindle a lot as well. I have to concentrate on that. And that's another thing that I've kind of found is that my concentration span has shrunk tremendously in the last 15 years, which is not something I'm proud of.
Now, is that ability to focus, or is that, what do you mean your concentration has gotten?
It's not that I can't focus, but it's like I'll read for 15 minutes and it's like, oh, I wonder if there's anything on my phone. And then I'll just scroll through my phone for 5 minutes and then I'll go back to my book. There's nothing going on in your phone right now. It's Saturday afternoon.
And do you think that's age or technology?
I think it's technology. This is not something I ever had an issue with before. I really do think I'm just very programmed to be looking at my phone. And normally once I get into the book, I'm good. I have been making a very conscious effort on the weekends lately to leave my phone in the house. I've been spending a lot of time in the garden. Like, that's very therapeutic to me. I just really love getting my hands dirty and mucking around and stuff. And I leave my phone in the house while I do that. I can't use it. My hands are dirty. And maybe for the first 10 minutes, I'll be thinking about it. But after that, I just get absorbed in what I'm doing and I completely forget I don't even have my phone.
Just as it's become a habit, like if you've ever looked at your screen time and the number of pickups that you have on your phone, I would encourage people to do that and see the number. Pretty amazing how many times we go and pick up our phone every day. Mm-hmm. But it is simply a habit also of not having our phones. I tend to want to have my phone, especially if I'm away from my family. So if I'm not with my son or my husband, I feel comfort in having my phone because I feel like I won't miss anything. If something happens, they can reach me. But under this pandemic where we're all together all the time, I've actually been able to put my phone away a lot more. I'm finding that there's less going on in social media because nobody's doing anything. And the stuff that's on there tends to be political and polarizing. So it's people celebrating, which is fantastic, or complaining, which is less fantastic. But it's not new or inspiring. And then my loved ones are close to me, so I don't need to be on my phone. So I've actually found that over the last couple of months, my time on my phone has gone down a lot more. I'm forgetting my phone. Like I will go somewhere and I'll forget it places. I never used to forget it downstairs. If I was going upstairs or outside, it would be outside with me. I wouldn't forget to bring it. And now I kind of do because I'm not checking in as much. And I'm hoping that that continues for me. I'd like to bring that number down and down again, because I realized after letting it go for a while, I'm not missing anything. It's much better being off of it.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, even just you and I, we text back and forth all the time, but over the last couple of months, like the amount of text message conversations we've had has dropped.
To the point where I'll think, oh, I haven't talked to you in a couple of days, and it's for no reason.
And it's just purely because I don't have my phone on me. You don't have your phone on you. And when I do have my phone on me, I think just because we don't talk as much, I'm more conscious of the fact that, I could text her right now, but she probably won't have her phone on her. Like what I was going to say wasn't really important. Like it's just me texting for the point of texting. So do I really need to do that? No, I really don't. Maybe that's behavior that will continue. Hopefully, to a certain extent. I suspect it won't.
I would like to give permission for people to be bored and to be quiet with themselves and to have lazy days. Like I just think society as a whole, we need to lighten up on that stuff and not be resentful. Like you hear, this of don't you know how busy I am? Or I'm a busy mom, right? Busyness in the mom world is huge and it is because it is busy. Like there's no question. And I think if we all just agree that everyone's busy, and whether you have one kid or 3 kids, or you have a working mom or a stay-at-home mom, like there's so much judgment over how your time is spent and who's busier and who's got more on their plate.
It's almost like it's a competition.
Yes, that nobody wants to win. It's so interesting that I think if we could just give everyone a break, we all agree. And this, I just speak of the mom world, but I think even outside of that, like it's mom or not mom or whatever your situation is, like if we can grant people permission and honor a badge of you found some stillness today or this weekend or this week, whatever little moment you were able to carve out where you truly didn't do anything productive, and honor and celebrate that as opposed to celebrating that, wow, you checked 5 things off your list in the last hour, getting all these things done.
Yeah, I hope that, I don't know, I have mixed feelings on this, but I've always believed, and the older I get, the more I believe this, that we make time for the things that are important to us. And it's very telling to me when somebody says they're busy, but you look at what they're actually doing. I'm not arguing that they're busy. They are busy. But I look at the things they're busy doing, and a lot of it feels like it's unnecessary busyness just to fill time almost. I don't know if that makes sense, but I think we tend to kind of just fill things up mindlessly. And that's something I've really made an effort in the last couple of years. I've mentioned this before, in 2015, I went through this 2015 to 2016, I think, went through this really horrible period of burnout that lasted almost a year. And I had to really go into like remedial living 101 to kind of figure my way out of it. And it really made me start to look at every single thing I do and ask myself why I do this. This is just me filling time because I just need to be busy, and I don't need to be busy all the time. And where it really became apparent is that year I took the first vacation I had had since I quit my job. So I had been going through this burnout, coming out of this burnout. I'd been making a lot of progress. And one of the things I needed to do was go on an actual vacation. I went to Tofino with my dog, and we stayed at one of the resorts right on the ocean. And this particular resort had cottages that were meant for groups, and they had hotel rooms. I was like, you know what? I'm just going to get a cottage. It's just me and my dog, but I just wanted the feel of a house with nobody in it. I just went for a week, and I took all these things with me, like all the things that I had been too busy to do. Like, well, I took all my sketchbooks, and I took a stack of books that I was going to read, and all my art supplies, and I was going to finally try water painting, and I packed it all into my car, and away we went. And we got there, and I brought it all in to the cottage, and I didn't pick up any of it the entire week. I didn't, like, nothing that week. We went for a walk as soon as we got there, down on the ocean. It was storm season, so it was very wet. It was very windy, but there's loads of people and dogs still out on the beach. I don't know if it was being near the ocean or if it was the storminess or a combination of them, but it was just like, it felt like it was just washing everything away. And I went back to the cottage, and all I did the entire trip was we went for walks along the beach, and I sat at the big dining room table with my Rainbow Squares book, and I did Rainbow Squares. That's all I did for an entire week. And it was just, my brain was just saying, we need a vacation. You haven't given us a vacation in 7 years.
Yeah.
We need time to process the last 7 years. You haven't given us that opportunity. You haven't, and it's not like you're intentionally processing each event, but my brain just needed time to wander. By the end of the week, I was like, wow, now I'm ready to have a vacation. You know what I mean? Because I'm the type of person who, when I do go on vacation, I like busy vacations. I like going to like Disney World or camping, or like, I'm not the type to just sit on a beach and read a book. I just don't enjoy that. I want to get out and see stuff and do stuff. And so the next year, I did the same trip, only this time I went for 2 weeks. And I did the same thing for that first week. I just let my brain go. And then for the second week, I told my business partner that I would work part-time remotely. And I kind of did, but not really. But by the end of the 2 weeks, my brain was firing. Like, it was on all cylinders. It was having ideas. It was like, like I couldn't wait to get back to work. I had so many things that we could do, and I was so pumped and excited and everything. And the year before, I hadn't given myself enough time to get there. But the second year, my brain had the time that it needed to kind of like just deal with all the stuff that had been accumulating in piles.
Yeah.
and then it had the chance to be on vacation. And then it was like, boom, Melissa, like, hey, thanks for the break. Like, we've got all this stuff for you. Just blah. When you avoid vacations because you're too busy or you don't have time or you don't have money or whatever, you're really doing yourself a disservice. And I really learned that lesson from that. Like, I needed to be flat out bored, like just nothing coming in and nothing going out.
So how do you take that and then put that into day-to-day life? Like, where, and I'm not saying you need to be bored every day, but it can't only be once a year, right? Like, you can't wait for a year. So how do you get that into being that every week you're bored, or every, month you're bored, or like, how do you slice and dice that down and apply it in this world where we are busy?
It's tricky because I know, like, we've talked about meditation several times, but I don't find meditation really does the same thing for me in the same way. To me, meditation is still an active activity that you're participating in. Does that make sense?
It does, yeah.
It's very calming and I get a lot of benefits from it, but I don't equate it with being bored.
No, because it's very intentional. Like, I think it requires a bit of planning, and it's not a task, but it's something you're intentionally scheduling to make time for. So
intentionally scheduling it. Yeah. Whereas being bored, that's a really good question. I'm not sure. I mean, one of the things that I did do for quite a long time was I would take weekends. For me, one of the things I need to remove myself from my day-to-day surroundings.
When you work from home. Yeah.
When you work from home, it's really hard to separate work and home when they're the same thing. I would often go to Ontario for long weekends. And I mean, I was very lucky that I was able to do that. Not everybody can hop on a plane and remove themselves for a weekend.
Especially these days, yeah.
Yeah, and I would go spend time there with friends and just, put my cell phone away and tell my business partner I'm disconnecting for the weekend and go. And I found it easier to do because I was with people. And we just kind of chilled out, hung out. There was nothing ever planned for the weekend. It was kind of like we did things as they came along. So it wasn't bored in the same true sense of being bored, but it was definitely a release. There was no ticking clock in the back of my head. There's nothing pressing that you have to get up and do. And I think that can really help. And there was always somebody to sort of chit chat with, but I was always with friends who were also equally comfortable with silence. I find being outdoors, in the summer, like I can very easily just go sit out on the deck and put my feet up, watch the world go by.
Being in nature definitely has that. Yeah.
I think so. And I can go for a walk with my dog, turn off my, not listen to podcasts or anything, and just sort of be absorbed in the sounds of whatever's around us. And I actually am somebody who, when I take transit, I actually do stare out the window. I love looking out the window, and I love people watching.
Yeah.
That's really fun for me too. And
I think people watching is definitely one that works.
It's a good one for triggering creative thoughts.
It
too.
really is, because I think you can get really lost in watching people. And if you go to a busy spot and just really absorb them, I think that can be quite a fun way to force a little bit of boredom on yourself. And I do find it creative, actually, to sit and watch. So I do think it kind of gets you thinking and gets your mind wandering. I find sitting outside, if you can find a space and you're just watching, there's that slight breeze where the leaves are just going.
Yes,
I find it's almost puts you into a bit of a trance. Like you can just start to feel the movement of the trees, and it's very calming to me. And I found the same with our fireplace. So we have an outdoor fireplace that we
Watching
have
a
just,
flame.
we have used it like we've really just basically moved outside since this all happened. It's funny because we even have a few people that we are able to socially distance with that will come over. And because nobody has anything new to say and we've literally run out of things to talk about, it'll quite often be silent, and it'll be four of us sitting around sort of staring at a flame, and everyone's sort of lost in their own thoughts. And it's quiet, but there's no need, there's no awkwardness. It's not an uncomfortable silence. It's a very much, you're in a trance, you're watching the fire, and you're just sort of thinking your own things. And I do find that very therapeutic without being so intentional as meditation is. Like I feel the pressure with meditation. I feel like I got to work now. They really say, right, true meditation, you don't let your mind wander. You don't, much like in yoga, you don't let your mind wander. You should be present and be feeling the space that you're in. And I think that doesn't sound boring to me. That sounds like focus.
That's it. Meditation is about focus, whereas boredom is like no focus. It's just letting, your mind wander. But you mentioned the fire, and I just made me think, and I know you're a big camper, but I haven't been camping in a few years, but we used to go all the time. And that sort of that evening routine where you all kind of sit in front of the fire and you've got a drink, or maybe you're roasting some marshmallows and you're chatting, but you're also just all really cool with just staring at the flames, poking the fire every now and then, and letting things wander. And you're usually being conscious of the noise that you're making because there's other people camping around you. So you're not, you're just being chill.
Yeah, it's like hushed tones, right? You're all kind of speaking, and when we camp, we don't have devices. There might be music going sometimes, but it's very calm and
it's soft and it's quiet.
And you're not in a hurry. Like dinner is when it is. So all your movements they're very slow and methodical, and you're not rushing. It doesn't matter if dinner is late or if we're eating early, and everything has its place. And there is a rhythm to being outdoors camping, having a fire going that I don't know if I would describe it as boring, but it certainly shuts my brain off in a lot of ways.
Yeah, you become very in tune with the sun. You get up when sun is shining through your tent window and you're like,
There you start to hear the kids up, like the little ones are riding their bikes. So you can kind of hear they've been told by their parents to be quiet, but you can hear like the whir of their bikes go by, and you start to smell the coffee and the bacon. And
and then as soon as the sun goes down, again, there's nothing you can do except literally go to bed or sit in front of the campfire.
Yeah.
You can't really do anything else. And yet it's so relaxing. Like you just feel so invigorated when you get back.
And if you can't go camping, I mean, if you just take the elements of camping, which basically is, nature, you're tech free, you're not on a schedule. Like if you can create a Saturday night at your house in that and add those elements, those ingredients, you can set up a boredom situation. Like you can set up a stillness if you can kind of add those elements in, because I do think it's something that we need on a regular basis, even just a couple hours of letting go of all of the pressure of all the things that need to be done all the time.
Yeah, I mean, if you've got a gas fireplace, you can turn that on and watch it. I'm thinking of like in the winter, or there's even that channel. There's a channel on one of the cable networks that's just literally a fireplace.
Yeah, fire and trees like are very calming, very still, and a bit mesmerizing. They can help you, give you something to focus on, to pull you out of focus of everything else.
Same with afternoons in the summer are always very lazy to me when it's just too hot to really do anything well. So, you go sit outside on the deck, pour yourself a cold drink, and maybe just sort of watch the clouds roll by. Nature plays a big part of it.
It can certainly help you get there, right?
Yeah, I definitely think it can. And I think like we all say we like nature, but we really do try to push it away. Like I'm thinking about, I have some neighbors who are outside every night, pretty much on their deck. They've got music, they've got twinkly lights, like they're doing everything they can to
add stimulation,
and to make the day last longer, as opposed to just being like, oh, let's just go sit outside and enjoy the sunset or enjoy the sounds. Nature definitely can play a part in it. But sometimes, I think we need to give our brains this opportunity to catch up. The only other chance it gets to do that is when we sleep. And let's be really honest, most of us don't get enough sleep. We're not even giving it a fighting chance.
And I think that really does start by respecting it and honoring it and celebrating it. And so when a friend comes to you and says, I didn't do much yesterday, it was a really boring day, I actually did just sit outside and watch the clouds go by, we shouldn't think, oh, must be nice, or oh, lucky you, or you don't have enough to do, or it needs to be met with, that's awesome. That's amazing. What did you think about? I just think we need to treat that as important as we would as if they said they just completed a painting or they just finished a huge project. It needs to be celebrated that much, not met with resentment, which in my community, I think sometimes boredom can be.
Yes, think about it. Think about how many times someone has said to you or you have said to somebody else, because we're all guilty of this. They've said, oh, yeah, you know what? I took an hour this afternoon to just chill out or go for a walk or something. And you have replied to them or they have replied to you with, oh, isn't that nice? In that semi-snarky tone, like how good for you that you were, that you got to take an hour to yourself.
Oh, my inside voice has said that many times.
Exactly. Like instead of just saying, oh, that's awesome. I'm so glad you found time to do that. That little snarky voice inside you is going, wow, it must be nice that you could find an hour with nothing to do. Like the rest of us can't do that.
So if we all reframe that, like if we're all starting to reframe and think about that differently and encourage it and think of it in a positive way as opposed to being that, you're absolutely right.
Yeah. So maybe next time somebody says that to you, instead in your head, you think to yourself, oh, that's great that they found that time. Why haven't I found that time this week? I should find that time for me.
Yeah.
Like I need to do that. I need to find an hour. That's a good way to reframe it, is just use it as a reminder.
Yeah. It's just reconciling it, right? To in your own head. Like, how did she make that happen? And what do I need to do to make that happen? And give yourself permission to make it happen.
Yeah. It's just a way to remind yourself that you've let the busyness creep back in and you just need to pull yourself out of it for a little bit. And there's nothing wrong with that at all.
I know, it's needed. Everybody needs it. We need to all slow down. And this is the time when if you're listening to this in real time.
And this is a time where you can be outside too. It's not snowing, it's not raining, hopefully, but like this is the time where we can all get outside and spend a little bit more, extend our day into the outdoors, be a little more in sync with the weather. 100 years ago, you wouldn't have had air conditioning in your office. If it was hot, it was hot. You'd go have a nap.
Exactly.
Right?
Yes. Yeah.
You'd go have a nap under a tree. Think about that and embrace that this summer. Just
give yourself the permission and it'd be interesting to note how it affects your creativity. Like, I'd love to hear, right? I'd like to, like, I know I'll make an effort for sure this summer to find some of those moments of boredom and see if it rejuvenates me and see if it sparks a bit of imagination or stimulates me in a sort of strategic way as it relates to the business, and see if I can really track the results of that. I really want to make time for, I don't want it to fly by. I want to slow things down. And I think by taking those boredom where the minutes are ticking by slowly, that's the only way you're going to slow time, because we all look up and all of a sudden it's 5 o'clock and we're not sure where the day went. That happens to everyone during the week. And if that can happen, you know, if you can slow that clock down even just once during the week, where you really feel like, wow, this only been 2 minutes, then I think that's actually a good thing.
Yeah, another thing that works for me is doodling. And that is an active thing, but it's actually, it comes out of boredom. I don't know how to explain it really, but if you've heard of the term Zen doodling, this is something that people do when they just they're trying to reach a state of Zen, where they just Google it. You'll find loads of examples of it. But really, you're not doodling anything in particular. You're just drawing shapes and dots and lines and circles and curly cues. And you don't need to have any drawing abilities whatsoever to Zen doodle. And it really is just, it's the act of your hands doing something while your mind wanders. That's the whole point of it. This is something I've always done instinctively. I talk about my rainbow squares, but that's what I did that whole week I was in Tofino. I just sat there and drew boxes with rainbow colored pens in different patterns.
Yeah.
There was like no rhyme or reason to it. It was just a way for my hand to be busy while my brain wandered off. I also find water is very good as well. The sound of water.
Oh, yeah, of course. You're right. Fire, wind, and water is the other one.
Being at the beach, listening to waves lapping up. That's why I love storm season on the West Coast, because there's something about the sound and the movement in the waves that is, I don't know, I find it incredibly calming, even though it's very stormy. But even things like washing dishes, like having the water running at the sink. I hate washing dishes, but I always have my best ideas when I'm washing dishes. My hands are scrubbing away. There's nothing else I can really be doing. I've got the sound of the water. Taking a shower does the same thing too. There's just something about standing under water and hearing the noise of it and just the way it moves. Yeah, I just find it incredibly relaxing, and my mind just wanders. If I'm ever really stuck in the evening with a problem, I just go have a shower early.
Yeah, it does reset you, right? And I think a key to a lot of this is not multitasking in some of these more serene tasks that we do. So some of these rituals, like I think about when you say, like, I spending more time outside, I'm sweeping a lot outside. So sweeping out the garage, sweeping the back deck and whatnot. And just the sound of that, like, as opposed to popping in a podcast or having on a conversation or talking on the phone while I'm folding laundry, like kind of taking some of these tasks and maybe trying not to multitask as much might be the way to sort of sneak a little boredom or some stillness back into your life. Washing dishes, doing laundry, sweeping, any of those chores at home. I think, even having a shower, having a bath where, you're not reading or watching or listening. You're just literally having a bath.
I could listen to a podcast while I'm washing dishes easily. I could have a TV on in the other room and keep washing dishes, but sometimes I just want the quiet. It comes down to just being comfortable in your own skin without a lot of stimulation. And we live in this world that is where we're overstimulated all the time.
Yeah.
And that has really very real physiological effects on your health. That whole fight or flight mechanism. We're constantly, I've been like hearing about this a lot lately, where what is it? I think it's cortisol. The levels of cortisol in your body are elevated all the time because we're constantly in flight mode, fight or flight mode.
It's constant engagement, constant.
Yeah, because we that's not how that system was designed to operate. It was only meant to operate when you were in danger of being eaten by something.
Flight or fight. Yeah.
But now we have it engaged all the time, and it causes all kinds of issues with your adrenal system and your hormones, and that can trigger things with your weight and all. Like they're starting to realize just how unhealthy busy is. It's not physically healthy for us. So that's really interesting, and I think that's one of the reasons why it really is important to just give yourself some time to just be in the moment and let your mind go.
I'd be interested to hear what people do this summer and kind of how they found their boredom. What was the secret to not getting too busy?
Yeah, I think it would be great to hear, especially with the state of the world right now. And I know a lot of us are not going to be able to we're not going to be able to take international vacations. We're not going to be able to get on planes. We're going to be staying much closer to home. And, our normal set of activities is going to be a little more limited. There won't be country fairs and exhibitions and music festivals and all that stuff.
This is the chance. This is the summer to set the reset button on that. And,
summer to be bored.
Yeah. Be careful what you add back into your life.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think just as we kind of get more and more used to this new normal, as things do start to go back to quote unquote the old normal, if they ever do, is we have this opportunity to be really conscious about what things we bring back in. Do I really need to do that? You know what? I got away for 6 months without doing it, so maybe I don't.
That brings us to the end of this discussion.
Next week, we are approaching episode number 20, which is a milestone for us. And we're super excited because we are going to be bringing our first guest onto the podcast next
that's
week.
Awesome.
So this was always our goal from the beginning, that we wanted to bring people in to talk to other artists, working women who create for a living. And we wanted to bring them in. We wanted to find out more about their stories, but we also wanted to pick their brains on some of the things that they do to successfully run their businesses. But we wanted a few episodes under our belt. And now that we're feeling pretty comfortable with all the tech pieces and just getting a good flow going, we're super excited to have our first guest on next week. I am really pumped for that.
Yeah, me too. I think she's an expert in so many fields that would be very pertinent to creative entrepreneurs. She's a stellar first guest to get for sure.
She is. She's a really sharp businesswoman, but she is also a very talented artist. I'm really excited. I think she's going to be a perfect first guest.
Well, I hope you find some stillness and some boredom for the rest of the day.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this week, and we will see you all next week.
Thank you so much for joining us for the And She Looked Up Creative Hour. Be sure to check out the show notes for any links or resources we talked about in this episode. If you enjoyed the chat, please be sure to subscribe, and you will automatically be notified when the new shows are released, and we'd love to hear from you. Drop us a review, tell us where you're listening from, or even just send a note to say hi. You can find us at andshelookedup.com or on Instagram under andshelookedup. Thanks so much for listening.